Hi there, I'm Cheese and welcome to my beginner's guide for Starsector. This is going to cover pretty much all the basics and then move on to more advanced stuff. So, I'm just going to get right into it. The reason why everything is looking kind of still here is because I have the game paused and I'm going to slowly start teaching you the controls of the game bit by bit. So for now, just treat this as if I was playing the tutorial even though I'm not playing the tutorial. This is a combat simulation I'm running right now, where I have a big enemy starship up the top of the screen. However, just treat this as if I was playing the tutorial, because I'm going to go over the combat basics right now. Okay, so to start off, one of the first things you should know is that I'm using pretty much all the default controls. I haven't really changed anything. So if you have all the controls on as left on the default, then you should be able to go along and follow the steps I'm doing and control your ship in pretty much the same way. So first off, one of the first controls we're going to be using is the spacebar, because right now everything is paused. Pressing the spacebar will pause and unpause the game, and this is great for making tactical decisions and giving you a bit of breathing time to figure out what you want to do to fight the enemy. So I'm just going to press spacebar here, and as you can see now, we have movement. And that is because I've actually got an option selected in the options menu that makes it so that your ship will constantly point its weapons to wherever your mouse is on the screen. So I'm right now moving the mouse right, and as you can see, my ship is turning very fast to face it, and I'm now moving my mouse left, and the ship is turning very fast to face the left of the screen. That is generally how this combat option works. If you want to change it to the harder control scheme, just go into the settings, again click on settings, and now click on the invert behavior of strafe to cursor button. This may sound like a mouthful, but it's actually really simple what it does. So now I'm going to hit save, and now as you can see, my ship is not turning to face where I point the mouse. Instead, I have to control it manually by using the movement keys, and I'm going to go over those really quickly as soon as I re-enable the setting, because in my personal opinion, for beginners, it's probably going to be easier to fight with the ship to face mouse option on, because, well, it's a little like turning cruise control on in a car. So now you know how to turn your ship. I'm going to go over the movement controls. W makes your ship go forward. I'm just going to tap it slightly, and as you can see, my ship is now moving. Now, the unique thing about Starsector is that it actually has kind of realistic physics when it comes to your ship and space and everything. So, hold on, just give me a minute. That was not meant to happen. I apparently have some of my weapons on auto fire, so I'm just going to quickly turn them off. I'll explain how to do that in a moment. So, as you can see there, that actually kind of was a perfect example of what happened. So I got in range of the enemy ship, and my weapons started auto-firing because I had them on auto-fire. And that is because it's pretty much like real space, like space in real life. Space in Starsector has no friction. So if you start to travel in a certain direction and even tap one of the movement keys, you keep traveling in that direction like I'm doing right now. For example, you can see this asteroid is moving past. That is because I backed up and hit S, which is pretty much the brake/reverse key, and your ship will keep on traveling in that direction. In fact, over here in the corner of the screen, there's actually the speed indicator showing how fast you're going. What do you want to do, though, if you want to bring your ship to a complete stop, but you don't want to start, for example, let's say I wanted to bring my ship to a stop, but I start accelerating here. So as you can see now, I've just accelerated too much. I'm now basically at the same speed going forward. Well, you hold down the C key on your keyboard, and that will engage pretty much the thrusters in your ship, bringing you to a complete stop. So now as you can see, my speed is at 0. From there, the rest of the stuff is pretty self-explanatory. So depending on where you are facing, D will make you strafe to the right of the screen, and A will make you strafe to the left of the screen. So yeah, as you can see, my speed is now increasing, and I'm going towards the left of the screen because I pressed A few times. This is very useful for performing maneuvers on the enemy as you drift past them. Then Q and E, they're pretty much diagonally strafing, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, and then I don't think there really is much of a diagonal strafe for like the for going backwards though. So I'm just gonna bring my ship to a complete stop again. So now that you know the basics of controlling your ship, I'm going to go over how you actually fire the weapons. So really, it's pretty simple. So to start off, I've actually already the game's already just selected my heavy autocannon as the weapon selected. So this yellow thing in front of my ship here that I'm kind of mousing over right now is a weapon firing arcs. So what's happening is that the autocannons I have selected right now are attempting to move and aim at the place where my mouse is pointing. So if I just left click, it fires them. Simple as that. And if you hold down the button, it continuously fires them. That's generally how to activate a ship's weapon systems in combat. For everything else, in like if it's not a gun type system like I have on these autocannons, it functions very similarly. So, for example, here I have some missiles, and if you just left click, they fire as well. And that one went there and just hit the asteroid. And that one hit the asteroid as well. These missiles are actually auto-tracking, so they're actually tracking the enemy ship I have on the map. Then the same functions for a lot of other weapon systems, such as these railguns I have on the ship. They are pretty much firing wherever I move the mouse. And then same for these point defense lasers here, which are normally used to attack enemy missiles. However, as you probably guessed by now, it's not really realistic to expect you to fire every single one of these weapons at once, because then you'd be constantly pressing the number keys on your keyboard to switch them. By the way, that's what I was actually doing there. I didn't explain that, but I was pressing the number keys on my keyboard to switch to them. So 1 in this case is my heavy autocannons, 2 with the missiles, 3 with the railgun, and 4 is the point defense laser. I just switched them again. So like now I'm pressing 4 using the point defense lasers. Now pressing 1 using the heavy autocannons. So what if you want some weapons to go and do their own thing, so you don't have to worry about firing all of them? Well, don't worry about that. That's combat readiness. I'll explain that later. Well, you can press Control and this corresponding number on your keyboard to enable your weapons to auto-fire. So I'm going to do that right now with my autocannons. Control, and then... Oh, not autocannons, railguns, sorry. The number 3 on my keyboard. So now they've been set to auto-fire. So if we just get in range of the enemy ship, and then press C to slow down, as you can see, they're automatically firing. If you want them to stop firing, press Control and the corresponding number key, such as 3 here, to turn them off. They've now stopped auto-firing. Let's just turn them on again and see what happens when we press 3 ourselves. So pressing 3 ourselves would then give us control over the weapon, letting us fire them, and then the moment we stop using control of them, it will go back to auto-fire, and they will continuously target the enemy ship. It's very useful in certain situations, but normally I don't like to turn the auto-fire of my weapons either on or off. I like to either keep it on, or I like to keep it off in my gameplay. So, now that you understand how to fire pretty much all the basic weapons in the game, I'm going to go over how shields work, because I actually haven't activated my shields so far at all, and shields are a very important part of gameplay in this game. So, this enemy ship here actually has its shields up, and I don't. So I'm going to go too close for my own safety here, and let it shoot me. As you can see, it has this tiny little gun here, which is now peppering my ship with heaps of little bullets. The numbers there are pretty much showing how much damage it's doing, and then what will start happening pretty soon is this is the indicator of how much armor I have on my ship. So if you get shot enough on a certain part of your ship, it will start reducing the armor there. The armor of your ship is pretty much like a static health pool that is unique to each part of the ship. So this hammerhead ship I have right now, it is currently being hit in the front armor. After enough hits on the front armor, the armor on the front would then start to change colors. It's first green, which means you have full armor. Then it will go from green to, I'm pretty sure, yellow, or yellowish, green to yellowish green, then to yellow, then to orange, then to red, then to gray. You don't want it to get to gray, because that means the armor is completely stripped from that part of the ship, and then you will take more damage. What do I mean by that part of the ship, though? Well, if we just unpause and rotate the ship, as you can see, the weapon will now start dealing damage to the rear of my ship. So this is really useful if you ever wanted to rotate your ship, because one part of your ship was taking a heap of damage, but another part wasn't. So you'd rotate it so that your ship would start, so that the less damaged parts of your ship would start facing the enemy, thereby making you take less damage. However, nearly all ships in this game have shields that they can activate. So I'm going to activate them now, and then move a little closer to the enemy. And you're going to see what happens real soon. So, as the enemy starts firing, now all the shots will start impacting on the shield instead of my ship, thereby protecting me from damage. However, now that is slowly building up the flux of my ship, which you can see right here. Flux is pretty much how much heat your ship is generating, and you don't want to let this get to the maximum, otherwise bad things will happen. I'm going to purposefully let this enemy ship shoot me, and I'm going to until it gets too much, to show you exactly what happens. This should only take a short while, because even with this pathetic little gun this freighter has here, it will be able to overload my ship soon enough. I'll explain what happens while it's shooting me anyway. So pretty much when your ship its flux reaches maximum, one of the first things that will happen generally is an overload. See there, right there, that's an overload. When an overload is happening, you cannot fire any weapons. I am holding down the left click right now, and for a little while I couldn't fire any weapons whatsoever because my ship was overloading. You generally don't want that to happen. Overloading will also make it so that, well, as well as weapons, it will also make it so you can't raise your shields again. What do you do when your ship overloads? You generally want to fly away from this enemy ship, like I have right now, to avoid taking more damage and overloading your ship a second time, because not being able to fire weapons is bad. So, there are generally two main ways that you can stop your ship from overloading, and you want to use either one depending on what the situation calls for. So I'm right now just bringing my ship to a stop again, activating my shields and going a little closer to the enemy ship so it can start shooting me and building up flux again. So, one of the ways you can stop your ship from overloading is just disable the shields, like so, and the flux will dissipate slowly on its own. But that may not be the best idea if you're right up against an enemy ship like I am right now, and it is shooting you with its weapons. So, what most AI players do in this game, and what you should probably do as well, is we're just going to let the flux build up a little bit, and actually kind of ram the enemy ship a little bit as well, to let the flux build up even more, so you can actually watch this in action in a moment. We're just going to keep ramming it. And now, we're going to fly away and hit one of the most important keys in the game, V. As you can see, all this purple stuff has now started coming off my ships, representing that it's venting flux. Pretty much, it's venting the heat. V vents flux. That should be pretty self-explanatory, and it makes a lot of sense to me. When you vent flux, your ship is basically a sitting duck, because when venting flux, it functions pretty much the same as, well, a little bit like your ship was overloading. So you can't raise the shields while venting flux, and you can't also fire weapons when venting flux. What is the actual point of venting flux in the first place then? That's a good question, and the answer is it gets rid of flux or heat in your ship a lot faster than simply disabling the shields would do. So you want to vent flux when you're nice and far away from the enemy, from any enemies next to you, and you got like allies protecting you. That's when you want to vent the flux. So I'm just going to quickly end this simulation. Okay, so now that I've explained how shields and flux works, I'm going to explain what different weapon types are and how they're actually useful for different types of simulation. So I've actually restarted the combat encounter here because I got my ship a little bit damaged, as you already know, from the weapons on this cargo freighter here. So it's going to unpause the game. And now I'm going to go over a few different types of weapons that this hammerhead here has. So, the two autocannons, like I've mentioned before, if I just fire them a bunch, in fact, we're just going to pause by pressing tab, and this brings up a tactical overlay. Then we're going to then we're going to left click on the enemy ship, and then we're going to set as target or press R here, then press escape to get back to the main map. I'll go over this really quickly, but I'm just explaining what I want to do here if you want to follow along. And now it will actually display, as you can see over here, the flux the enemy ship has in the hull, so we can see how much damage we are doing, how much flux damage we are doing to this enemy ship with each of our different weapons. So as you can see here, the autocannons we have are apparently very good for overloading the shields of the enemy ship. If we were to switch to the railguns here, as you can see, well, they don't have their shields up now for some stupid reason. I don't understand why, so we're actually doing damage to the actual ship, but they're kind of good at it as well. And then last off, we have the points defense lasers, which are not that good at generating flux, and also their arcs are kind of wonky, so we can only really fire one at a time at the enemy shield, because these are really meant to be for getting rid of missiles. They're not really meant for actually combating enemy ships. Yeah, and then also also another thing about this game is that generally missiles are a good finisher weapon. So what I mean by that is once you were to reduce the enemy shields, like I'm doing right now with these missiles, then you'd want to fire directly at the enemy ship, and they will generally do a lot of damage, and then perhaps switch to the autocannons to finish them off. And that is generally how a lot of combat in this game works. Oh, also you're seeing here when it says like the light machine gun there was disabled, that's what happens to your ship when it gets shot too much. When your ship gets shot too much in a certain place, some of your weapons may start getting disabled, so it's generally a good idea to continuously hit an enemy in the same place over and over and over and over again, because when you do that, it will not only continuously do damage to the same piece of armor like I mentioned before, it'll also start disabling the weapon systems. And as you can see now, we've done enough damage to the cargo freighter here to actually destroy it. So, now I'm going to move on to how point defense weapons actually work, so you can see them in action. So I'm not just explaining that they attack missiles. I actually want to show you that they're actually very good at firing enemy missiles and defeating them. So I'll get right back to you once I've spawned the enemy ship with actual missiles. Alright, so when it comes to point defense, there isn't actually really that much to explain here. Same as usual, I'm just in the simulation, and if we just go to the reinforcements tab, I've went and spawned 2 strike destroyers, and they're equipped with missiles, and enabled I've exchanged the railguns on the front of my ship for machine guns. One's a dual machine gun, another one's a machine gun, and now you're pretty much going to see that, well, point defense will work very, very well when you have it on auto fire. In fact, that's what you recommended to do. Have it on auto fire instead of having it off auto fire, because if you have it off auto fire, like I'm going to do now, and yeah, then when you try and target the missiles, they will normally actually shoot you. They will end up hitting your shields or hitting your ship. As you can see, they are not that good at targeting it. But as soon as I switch to auto fire, they're actually able to like really auto track the missiles and do a much better job of hitting them and taking them down. And this can also be really, really useful, because in this case, the missiles these ships are firing have only 1 ammo. But what I mean by that is some missiles, such as the Salamander missile, can actually fire multiple times. But in this case, the missiles can only fire once, and that's really it. So with a lot of ships, if you use your point defense correctly, like I have here, and just let them do their thing and take down all the enemy missiles, you don't really have to deal with missiles again, and you can kind of just engage this ship here and try and take it down. As you can see over here, I'm actually doing damage to its actual hull, because I got past the shield, and then I can kind of back up here. So as you can see here, the point defense done a wonderful job. Oh, by the way, one other thing, I'm just going to end the simulation real quick. In my opinion, you may find this works differently for you, but I find the best type of point defense are the kinetic weapons, so not the light mortar and railgun, because they actually don't count as point defense, but mainly the light machine gun and the dual light machine gun, and perhaps the dual light autocannon are the best for taking down enemy missiles. Stuff like this point defense laser here, I'm pretty sure when I start up this actual game again, I'm going to exchange out all the point defense lasers here for just light machine guns, because not only do they cost less ordnance points up here, but they also just seem to track enemy missiles better, even though this thing here has slightly longer range of 400 instead of 300. in my opinion, machine guns just track missiles better. Anyway, that pretty much covers for point defense. On to the next part of this video. Okay, so even though I was originally planning to move on to the tactical combat menu next and explain all the nifty little features about that, there is something major that I forgot about when it comes to just general fighting and steering your ship and all that. So, when you have 0 flux, which I just explained before, your ship actually gets a boost in movement speed, which you can now actually see happening now. Generally, you know this is happening when the flames are nice and big and orange at the back of your ship. And yeah, that generally means that your ship has increased movement. However, firing weapons like so will make your ship move a little bit slower. In fact, I'm pretty sure you can actually see it happening. So I'm right now firing all the light machine guns on this Phaetron class tanker, and as you can see, it's moving a bit slower. Then immediately, the moment I stop firing them, you can actually see like the engines there kind of powering up, and the ship starts flying a bit faster. So because of that, it may sometimes be a good idea to actually toggle the auto fire off your weapons if you wanted your ship to be moving nice and fast, but you didn't want the weapons to be shooting every damn thing in sight. So I'm actually going to show that off right now by getting nice and close to this tanker and just letting my weapons auto fire. Apparently my weapons aren't auto firing, but if I were to just imagine my weapons were auto firing and I were to fly past this enemy ship. Yeah, as you can see, they're actually overloaded, so that might be another reason why you might not want your weapons to auto fire, because you're flying close to an enemy ship and you just don't really want to kind of skim around them with your ship at full speed when suddenly your ship the weapons start auto firing, which is why you may want to toggle them off. Okay, so now I've gone over some of the basics of ship combat. I'm going to explain how the tactical overlay works, which you access by pressing tab. So we just unpause the game here. You can most likely see this over here. This is actually the enemy freighter that I've been fighting so far. I just respawned it because I wanted to clear the damage on it and also my ship, so I can explain the tactical overlay. So as you can see, when I'm really close to my ship, which is currently drifting ever so slightly to the side here, just going to stop by pressing C again. You can see that the enemy freighter is right now so far away, actually, because I've been drifting a little bit, that I can't actually see it, and it's got just a number indicating like how many meters or whatever, like the distance it is away from my ship, but I can't actually see it. However, if I press tab here and bring up the tactical overlay, you can now see how you can now see where my ship is in relation to kind of this tactical grid here, and you can now see the enemy ship. The reason why you want to use this often, even if you're not giving orders to your ships, is because this overlay is very, very good for seeing how far away the enemy is, if they're in your line of sight. So this is kind of like your circular vision cone, and it's also great for selecting them and then getting detailed information about the enemy ship. So that's what I'm actually going to do right now. So just move your mouse over this cargo freighter if you're following along with what I'm doing. Or just any other enemy ship you happen to be fighting one right now, and you're, well, I actually realized it might be a little hard to follow along with what I'm doing since I'm running a simulation. I haven't even really told you how to get into the simulation. Anyway, I'm just going to press R here on my keyboard. You can also left click this to select it as a target, and now the enemy ship will be selected as a target. You can see now the name of the enemy ship, its overall armor value, in the bottom left corner of the screen here. If you mouse over it, it gives you more information about the ship type. So as you can see, this is a SIM Green Moon Atlas class standard super freighter. In other words, it's terrible at combat, which is why I constantly love facing them, because they don't generally won't attack you unless you attack them, like you've seen before. This is the armor on it, represented in blue because it's the enemy. Odd, I'd normally expect that to be red, but that's kind of like, as you can see, the core of the ship where it's yellow, and then as you do armor damage to it, you would slowly strip away. This is the its hull, which is the general health of the ship. So when explaining armor before, I actually forgot to mention that once you chew through all the enemy armor on an enemy ship, or the enemy chews through all the armor on your ship, you will start doing hull damage. Hull damage is pretty much, and hull is like hit points in any other games. When it drops to 0, your ship will explode and go boom. That is not good. You want the enemy to go boom and explode instead. This is the current flux they have. So as you remember before, I was telling you about how the enemy ship was slowly generating flux as I shot its shield, which then you will need to vent by pressing V, like I mentioned before. So yeah, this is just generally, you can see how much flux the enemy has. And then we also have our combat readiness here, which I might as well explain now. So, ages ago, when this game was first released, the developers hadn't implemented combat readiness yet. What this meant was that occasionally you had fights that dragged on for ages because enemy AI captains would fly to the edge of the map and you'd have to spend ages to chase them down, or they'd constantly just stay a little bit out of range and nothing would happen and the fights would get boring. So combat readiness is generally how ready your crew are to fight and fatigue and generally all that kind of stuff. It would keep on decreasing if you have an enemy within your vision cone, and if it reaches 0 or starts going into the negative, your ship or the enemy ship, if their combat readiness gets too low, will start having malfunctions. Weapons will stop working, engines will short out, the ship may even take damage, or the worst part is you may just overload like you've seen before, which is what happens when too much flux damage is dealt to your shields while you have them up. That is all generally bad news. Another benefit of using this tactical combat mode, we're just going to press tab to get rid of it, is that you can now see the range the enemy ship is at and the general speed it is going, also what kind of ship it is, and what kind of weapons it has. So it right now, the game is telling me it currently has a bunch of light machine guns to do battle with, which is basically a bunch of point defense weapons, and I have a lot more weapons that can actually do a lot more damage. So, moving on from the tactical view, that was basically just the basics of the tactical view. I will cover some more advanced stuff about it in just a moment. Now I'm going to cover how to actually command allies with a tactical view, because you will most likely have a lot of allies that will help fight with you in this campaign, and you may also have multiple enemies that you have to face at the same time, and knowing how to command your allies is honestly a really, really great idea, rather than learning to do their own stuff. The AI in this game is very clever, and they will generally know what they're doing, but sometimes you just want to give them a bit more of a direct order. So I'm just going to run the same simulation as before, and I'm going to spawn the same ship, except I'm going to spawn 2 different types of allied ships that I happen to have here in this single-player campaign. I'm going to spawn a Shepherd-class drone trader, and I am also going to spawn a mule combat freighter. And I'm going to deploy them now, and now we're going to unpause and exit the tactical map. And as you can generally see, here are the ships, and oh, I think I've actually forgot to spawn any enemies. Yeah, I have. So I actually forgot to spawn the combat freighter, so that's why the allied ships here aren't moving. But as you can see, as soon as I spawn it, they will immediately rush off into combat and attempt to fight the enemy freighter, which is generally actually a good thing, because AI ships in this game are very smart, and they tend to know what they're doing most of the time, and they will generally move out of combat when their flux gets too high, and they will fire their missile weapons at range, like you can see here. Right, these two are currently kind of orbiting this freighter, and they don't want to attack it just yet. You can, of course, order them to attack it in a few ways. So these red arrows mean they're kind of orbiting it. I've just learned that from playing the game, and they are currently trying to figure out the best angle to attack the enemy combat freighter from. No, not combat freighter, enemy freighter. So, one of the easiest ways you can order your ships to attack an enemy is by pressing tab, like I've done now to bring up the tactical view, left-clicking on your ship, and then right-clicking the, okay, you may actually not want to do what I just did there. Yeah, that might be a bit of a terrible move, because right-clicking it is actually is actually a way to assign the eliminate command, which generally means that if you select something and then assign something to eliminate it, it will generally ignore all enemy ships in the nearby vicinity. So let's say there was more enemies, my mule-class combat freighter here would generally ignore this would ignore all enemies around it and possibly get itself killed by the allies that are helping this freighter here. So instead, if you click the enemy ship and then click engage, it will tell one of your ships to engage this ship and generally attack it without moving in really close and ignoring everything else. So now, if we just unpause, my mule here is going to go in and start fighting it. I guess it still wants to stay at range for some strange reason. Maybe if we move a little closer and actually start fire. Okay, good. It's finally moving in. But also sometimes your ships won't attack an enemy that much unless you kind of move in yourself and attack it yourself. Yeah, so now you can see everything is generally kind of working. My ships are attacking theirs, and this drone tender here is pretty much staying back and not really attacking much because it doesn't have that many guns. So this is actually an excellent segue into explaining about carrier ships and non-carrier ships. So my hammerhead here is pretty much a non-carrier ship. That means it doesn't have any fighters with it. However, if we just like unpause, you can see here these are actually a bunch of drones that are all friendly and being spawned out of this drone tender here, and they are currently, as you can see here, moving in to attack the combat freighter very slowly. I'm actually going to order my ship. I'm actually going to order my ship here to just bugger off and go to the other corner of the map, so you can actually see the drones slowly attack it. Yeah, as you can see, they're using their little lasers here to attack it. And this is generally how most carrier type ships will act. They'll stay at range and they won't attack their actual target. They'll just get all their fighters to attack the target instead. And yes, drones do actually count as fighters, even though they're in this case just drones. However, if we were to click on our little drone tender and then, oh, okay, apparently that's actually something that's unique. So if you were to right-click a enemy ship while on a carrier, the carrier will most of the time do a fighter strike against the enemy ship. And generally a fighter strike is this here. When you click on an enemy ship and click S, it orders fighters from nearby carriers to attack the enemy ship. So this little drone tender here is actually being very smart and not going and just going gung-ho in here and attacking this enemy freighter here, because it knows it doesn't have too many actual decent weapons on it. It only really has, I guess, a missile launcher here. Oh, apparently it is actually moving no, it's not moving a little close. It's just attacking with the drones. So I don't really know how to actually order one of your carriers to move close enough and use its missile launchers. Well, actually, there's one way, and that is just if you set this as a eliminate target, then both ships here will start. Then all the ships you own will start attacking. But what I'm saying is I don't know how to individually tell a carrier how to go and eliminate an enemy ship. If perhaps you put a little missiles on one of your carriers and you want it to move a little closer to engage its missiles. I don't really know how to actually order one of your carriers to do that. So those are the basic orders for telling your ships how to attack. However, what if you have an enemy ship that you want your ships to avoid completely? Well, there's a button for that. Right here, avoid. If it's possible, all your ships will avoid any ship you assign this order to, and that can actually be very useful if you are facing some kind of really strong enemy like I faced in the campaign before, one with a lot of plasma weaponry and a lot of point defense that kind of just is a huge ship that likes to roll in and destroy everything. Then this is a very useful button for ordering your ships to avoid it. I don't really actually need to click here and see it in action because my ship's now already pretty much avoiding the enemy ship. They're not even getting closer. But just imagine if an enemy ship, one of your ships was really close, like here, you press the avoid button, it would immediately start backing off. It's very useful. Harass is a command that's useful if there's an enemy ship that's really, really deadly with all its weapons, but you want it to be shot at a little bit from range, especially by missile cruisers, to, for example, build up the flux on its shield so then you can move in and attack it later. So that's what that does. Engage, I already covered before. And then we have these two big buttons here, in fact, three buttons, reinforcements, full assault, and full retreat. So, first off, full assault is a button where once you click it, it actually gives you a warning saying, are you sure? Because full assault is pretty much ordering an eliminate command. So this command here, the one where they ignore other enemy ships in the area, and it's basically full assault is an eliminate for the entire enemy fleet. Every single enemy ship on screen will basically be targeted as if you put the eliminate command on it. And also, once you click full assault and then click yes, there is also, it will also use a command point to toggle it off. So I currently don't actually have them here because it's giving me infinite command points in this because this is just a simulation. But command points will generate slowly depending on how many of your ships have an ECM rating, which I will cover a little later. It's pretty much like an electronic warfare rating. It indicates how techy your ships are, and this will start increasing slowly depending on the more of that you have, and you need to use command points to actually give orders. So, for example, the eliminate order that I had just selected on this enemy ship before, it was actually using one command point to give that order so enemy ships can go there. It's so you can't just micromanage everything to a T all over the place, and you actually have to think about what orders you do and actually be tactical. That's why it's there in the first place. Then you also have the full retreat button, which is pretty much this is actually a bit more, once you click it, it's actually a bit more of a big deal than the full assault button, because you can actually cancel the full assault button, but the full retreat will order all your ships to frantically retreat the area, which is why if you do need a retreat, it may be better to individually order the ships to retreat, which I'll go over now. So when clicking one of your ships, a friendly ship, there are two retreat buttons you can click. One is just the regular retreat, which is assigned to the T key on your keyboard, and then the direct retreat, which is assigned to the D key on your keyboard. So how it works is that if I was to select one ship and order it to retreat, in fact, I'm going to do it now for the drone tender just so you can see, it will now basically do the equivalent of backpedaling in space. It will make sure that its engines generally, or wherever its shield is located, is facing away from the enemy, and it will slowly retreat the battlefield while still engaging enemy ships. And once it thinks it's far enough away from the enemy, as you can see here, it will start engaging its it will start actually engaging its engines fully, and it will try to get all the way to the edge of the map. And once it reaches the edge of the map, your ship is kind of fully retreated, and you can potentially save it from dying, especially if you have a ship that's at like really low hull health. I'm now going to show you what full retreat does by just disabling this waypoint and ordering this mule here to actually, in fact, no, not that command. I'm going to order it to just go really, really close to the enemy ship. Not actually order it to attack, but just use a waypoint there to order it really close to the enemy ship, so then you can see what the direct retreat function looks like. I, of course, just need to fly a little closer so I can actually get near the enemy ship, and then we just need to wait for the mule to come along as well, which honestly shouldn't take that long. Yeah, and as you can see, it actually gives you an indicator there once one of your ships has fully retreated. Right, so now as you can see, my mule is fully in range. I'm going to now disable the waypoint here, and I am going to order it to do a direct retreat. So it may look like it's not really doing it, but trust me when I say this ship is doing pretty much a direct retreat. It is right now not getting its it is right now not making sure it is constantly facing the enemy with its front or its shields or anything. It is just doing a wide arc and trying to get the hell out of there, using as much of its engine power as it can to get away from this freighter. Yes, so I think this generally covers... oh wait, yes, of course there are a few more extra things you can also do with your ships. So while some of my ships have retreated now, I'm going to just bring in a few more. Some tanker ships, even though you generally shouldn't bring them into an actual battle. So I can explain one of the last two commands in the tactical menu, which is some of the escort commands. So as you can see here, my ships just came in. And now, these here are the escort commands. So, this pretty much indicates to other ships in your fleet that you want this ship to be escorted, which can actually be very useful in many situations. Let's say I was actually retreating from the enemy here, and the enemy had a lot of force that could actually potentially kill my fuel ships here, I could press this command here, and it will now order one of my frigates to go and escort that ship. In fact, I'm actually going to cancel the retreat here, and this ship is probably going to start escorting this fuel ship here. So that's a light escort. It orders one frigate in your fleet to escort the target, and medium escorts order a pair of frigates or destroyer to escort it. So apparently this ship isn't actually a frigate, it's a destroyer. So you can see with a medium escort, it is now actually escorting this fuel tanker, and it'll stay nice and close to it. And then a heavy escort orders up to 4 frigates or 2 destroyers or a cruiser and some light fighter craft to escort the target, depending on what ships are available. So yeah, that just means I want this thing very, very escorted. I want it nice and protected and safe. Thank you very much. So those are ways you can order kind of an automatic escort. What if you wanted certain ships to escort certain targets? Well, I'm just going to right now clear all the assignments from here, including the one in this, and you can actually do that. Let's say I wanted this ship really protected by all the ships I had, and all I had was this other drone tender. All I had was this other fuel tanker and this one ship. You can just right-click a ship, and then right-click another one, and no matter what type of ship it is, you will then order that ship to guard the other ship with its life, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, that actually pretty much covers how you order ships to escort other ships. That's all there really is to it. When clicking and right-clicking another ship, you can order any number of ships to guard another one. I once had one of my big capital ships in heaps of danger, so I just ordered like 4 other ships to guard it, and it turned out very well because they kind of swarmed in and protected it, and it was able to stave off the enemy attackers and fire all its weapons and kill an enemy ship. It was great. So now that I've explained pretty much how escorts work, I'm going to move on to 2 of the last commands that you can use in the tactical interface, which is the live video feed function and the take command function. So let's say my hammerhead here, I'm just going to leave it right here, and let's say it had gotten blown up, yet I didn't want to deploy another ship and take command over it, and I just wanted to see how my men are doing, my ships are doing basically, and I wanted to get a better overview, because when your ship blows up, generally your camera will stay positioned in one place. So if my hammerhead were to blow up here, my camera would kind of be stuck around this location. So what you can do when that happens is you can press tab, go over to enemy ship, such as this fuel tanker here, and then you can press F to show a live video feed, and now you can move the camera around, and the ship here will be being controlled by the AI, like it already was, but now you can see what the ship is actually doing. Also, if let's say my hammerhead there happened to get blown up, and you have one of your captains who, like one of your AI ship controlled ships, which is not doing what you want, or you just want to take command of another ship that isn't blown up because yours has exploded and you wanted to fight in the battle again, just bring up the tactical menu again, and then you can press X here to transfer command, and then what will end up happening is this little ship here will fly out of your ship into the other ship that you selected, and once it enters the ship, it's kind of like your captain going and basically transferring command off one ship into another. So now I can actually fire the weapons of this fuel tanker here, and we will defeat the enemy transport shortly. Yeah. So it's basically transferring command is great if you want to do something and get something done yourself, and you think that the AI you're commanding aren't doing a good job. Like, let's say this ship here, I had ordered to do a full retreat, and I didn't think it was retreating fast enough or well enough, or I think it should suddenly face one certain enemy, or I think it should shoot down fighters better, or I just want to retreat it myself because it's a really valuable high-class ship. I can just transfer a command, and then I have full control over this fuel tanker here. And I think that about covers the tactical menu. I'm now going to cover some of the things I neglected to cover before, but yeah, I'm going to be putting timestamps in the video description so that if you want to learn about certain parts of combat and stuff, you can just skip to them. Okay, so now that I've gone over basic movement controls to your ship and the tactical menu in depth, I'm going to cover refitting your ship. So, whenever you are at a space-side station or a planet like I am right now, and you're in the refit screen, like while accessing a dock there, you can refit your spaceships to your heart's desire. Well, not entirely, for the most part, usually. So there are generally two different ways you can change out the weapons and stuff like that for your ship. One of the simplest ways is simply left-clicking the weapon you want and then selecting a different weapon from this here drop-down menu. It may seem confusing, but I'll explain it, well, right now. So the first thing that you want to take note of is the weapon's name. This one's a heavy autocannon, for example, the weapon I was using before. Next up, you have what type of weapon it is. So you have ballistic weapons, energy weapons, and missile weapons. Generally, the rule of thumb with different types of weapons is ballistic weapons are guns, and guns generally have travel time, so they can potentially be avoided by really, really fast ships. Energy weapons are beams. They have a little less travel time, but when they're firing, either they will be bursts, so bolts of energy, or they will be continuous beams, and if they are continuous beams, they are harder to avoid when it comes to flying past them. And missile is very self-explanatory. You fire the missile, it tracks the enemy, it hits, it explodes. And you have different types of missiles. Missiles that are good against fighters, and missiles that are good against enemy ships. Next, here, you have a list of all the different available weapons that you can change the current weapon out with. And this depends on a number of different factors. So, the first thing it will list is everything in this gray tab, which is owned, meaning that you have this weapon right now in your cargo hold, and you can easily slot it into your ship, like so. I have just put a heavy mortar in the slot where the autocannon used to be, and I've exchanged it again for a autocannon again because I like autocannons more. And this is pretty much the easiest way of refitting the ship. Then you also have the red tab, which is black market, and the yellow tab, which is open market. I'll go over that later when actually purchasing stuff. This is right now just all about refitting your ship. So, another thing to remember is the size of the weapon mount. For example, this one here, this heavy autocannon, I'm pretty sure this is a medium-sized mount. So, generally, you can put medium-sized weapons such as dual flak cannons, heavy mortars, and the heavy autocannon like I already have in there in this slot. But you cannot put bigger weapons in there because that would most likely break the ship and make it explode as soon as you fly it, and you don't want that. You can, however, put smaller weapons in there. I have no idea why you want to do this, but if you really wanted, you could put a light mortar in there, which is a much weaker weapon compared to a heavy autocannon, and it also generally does less damage. Yeah, that is generally how you fit different weapons into your ship. But how do you know if a weapon actually works good or works well? Well, the really simple way to do that, hold on, just don't worry about what I'm doing here, I'll explain that in a moment, is to click on the Run Simulation button, which is actually where I was showing you the combat in the earlier section of the video. So this is how you actually get into the combat arena I was showing you before. All I done was I just click this button here to deploy the super freight, basically the freighter ship with all the cargo containers. Then I click deploy, and here we are in the combat arena and the simulation arena, like I was showing you before, with all the controls like I was showing you before. And now you can left click and fire and test out all your weapons just to get a feel of them, how often they fire, what kind of bullets they have, or if they have laser or energy, or if they're a missile, and how fast the missile travels and all that. Because honestly, I've been playing this game for ages by now, and I still don't understand 90% of the tooltips of this game, was actually telling me about how each weapon works. So what I like to always do is just go into the Run Simulation button, and then I click the Run Simulation button, take my ship around, and shoot that cargo freighter, and see how it reacts with the shields and everything. That's generally how I figure out the ship. So, next, going over a few more buttons here. Undo is very self-explanatory. Put the mortar in, don't want the mortar, click undo, it immediately puts the autocannon back in there, and you won't have to worry about selecting the right weapon if it's really late at night and you forget what weapon you just slotted in there. Next up, we have the strip option, I'm just going to click this and then click undo, because that pretty much rips off all the weapons on the ship immediately, and it lets you put new weapons in instead of changing out each individual weapon individually. Then we have the autofit option, which is actually very, very useful when first starting out, because it will equip your ship with a predefined loadout, and the developers of this game have made the predefined loadouts very, very good. So most likely if you use one of these, then they will serve you very well for a majority of the game until you understand how to fit weapons yourself. So generally, when choosing an auto-fit option, you have a few selections available. So these are pretty self-explanatory. Balanced means that it's generally a balanced type of ship that is good at defense and offense, and it'll include a bunch of hull molds as well, which I'll go over very soon to help with that. Overdriven is usually the more risky endeavor, where it will include stuff such as safety overrides, a hull mod which changes the ship up a lot, and then you have support, which is mainly used for kind of supporting enemy ships, allied ships, staying back and not rushing into the fight too much. And occasionally you will have another slot. This slot, by the look of it, is actually empty. So if I were to, for example, I wanted to save the ship I have here, which is a variant on the balanced version, except instead of heavy mortars, it has autocannons. So I could just click here, and then I could click my current variant, and now as you can see, it's called balance here. I'm not sure if there's a way to change the name yet, but now the ship I use and I like to use is saved here, so if I have other hammerheads in the future, I can outfit it my way. Then we also have the options for use ordnance. Actually, I'll explain that a little later. I might as well move on right now to oh yeah, I really should cover weapon groups. So when clicking this may look a little confusing, but trust me, it is actually not that complicated. I am going to explain it now. So, how weapon groups work is it's a great way to enable two weapons at once, or potentially more, to fire at the same time. So I'm going to show you what I mean right now by assigning this heavy autocannon to slot 5, and then clicking confirm, and we are going to run the same simulation as before, spawn that ship, and press tab to get out of it, and now, as you can see, only one autocannon is actually firing, whereas before, 2 were firing. And that is because the game had, by default, and this is very clever that the game had done this, linked both autocannons to slot 1. So when I was pressing slot 1 on the keyboard, it was then selecting the autocannons and enabling the autocannons to fire because they are currently located in slot 1, as you can see here. These buttons here enable you to turn on or off autofire for certain weapons as soon as the ship deploys. So you remember before in the video, earlier parts of the video, how I was constantly pressing Control and then 3 to tell my railguns to stop automatically shooting because I didn't want that. Well, if I were to uncheck 3 and make it not glowing blue here, the railguns here would not automatically fire the moment you get into the moment they see any enemy, and right when you deploy the ship, they would not start automatically firing. So yeah, that is generally how the weapon groups managing works. You can reassign weapons to different weapon groups. For example, if I wanted the railguns on a separate weapon group and then having only one railgun auto-firing for some reason, I could click this, and it would generally work like that. But yeah, that's generally how they work. General rule of thumb, most point defense weapons, especially listed here is like a PD laser, which means point defense laser, you want to have on auto fire because they generally take little to no flux to fire, and they're good at shooting down any missiles. Also, the auto targeting in this game is really, really good. So I know some players, and I have, if you decide to do this, this is definitely not the wrong way of playing at all. You can definitely play like this, and it will actually maybe benefit you a lot. You can turn on auto fire for every single one of your weapons, maybe except the missiles, and just fly near the enemy and let the auto targeting kick in and shoot stuff when it gets near. So yeah, that is generally weapon groups and how they work. I think that's everything I need to cover about them. Now moving on to hull mods, um, flux capacity and flux vent. So if you remember before, when I was actually talking about how ships generate flux and how you disable your shields or press V to vent the flux, that is what this thing here right now means, vents. So this number here is pretty much how many points we have put into how good our ship, into the vents of our ship, which indicates how good our ship can get rid of excess flux. And this here is the total number of points that your ship has to allocate across hull mods, weapons, capacitors, which is how much flux you can have in total and how much damage your shields can take at the same time. Yes, I know it's a bit complicated, but it's all rolled into one. Trust me, you get used to it as time goes on. And also the ordnance points for weapons. So for example, if I were to right click this heavy autocannon here, it would actually, and remove it, it would then give me more points to spend on potentially adding more hull mods or more capacities, more vents. So if I just click this button here, I would start increasing the total number or the total amount of shields my ship had or flux capacity, same thing really. And then it would also include, by also increasing the vents, it would increase like how much flux my ship could get rid of. So that's generally how those work. Then we have hull mods. So how they work is I'm just going to remove this one here and also remove the heavy autocannon, so we have a nice amount of points to play with. And I'm going to click add, and then it is going to bring up this huge confusing list of different hull mods. But trust me when I say you generally, after enough time, start finding your favorites amongst this list and start choosing what you want over choosing your favorite hull mods and selecting only a select few. At least that's what happened to me over a bunch of ships. So I actually haven't even explained what hull mods are, though. They are generally modifications that change little parts of your ship, hopefully for the better. Hopefully you haven't modded your ship so that it doesn't work out for you and that everything is screwed up and it blows up. So, how does a hull mod work? Well, if you move over to it, it gives you a general description of it, and from there you can look it up on the wiki if you're really unsure, and you try and figure out what is best for your ships. So I'm going to go over one of mine that used to be my favorite, and I've decided to not use it so much anymore, auxiliary thrusters. It increases the ship's maneuverability by 50%. So if I were to click it, this hull mod would then be added to the ship, taking 10 points. So this is pretty much spent the 10 points I just gained by removing the previous hull mod, reinforced bulkheads. And now, if I were to run the simulation again after just saying yes to these weapon groups. Oh, apparently, yeah, I forgot I'm missing out on one of the heavy autocannons. So let me just add that back in again, click confirm, and now run the simulation and deploy the enemy ship. And yeah, as you can see, the ship is actually now turning around as I move the mouse a lot faster, and that is thanks to the auxiliary thrusters. That's actually the auxiliary thrusters at work. So if you wanted to, for example, for some reason fire all around your ship, kind of like a madman, and hit everything in range, the auxiliary thrusters would actually be an excellent idea to spin more, but I'm not sure why you want to do this. This is not a valid combat tactic. This is kind of you want to mess around, be silly, and, well, die. Yeah. So that is auxiliary thrusters at work. There are a heap to go over. I really don't want to cover every single one of them, but I'm going to cover a select few, which in my opinion are very, very good for beginners, and a single one I'm going to explain that you might want to avoid starting off. So, the one I actually really recommend for beginners is actually reinforced bulkheads. This increases your ship's hull integrity, in other words health, by 40%, and also if the ship blows up because you're new and you're beginner, you have more chances of salvaging the ship and like repairing it and getting it back and making it good again. So that is an excellent choice in my opinion. Another excellent choice is efficiency overhaul. This makes so your ships eat through less of supplies, which is a certain currency in the game, which I'll go over later. Just trust when I say it's good. Another one I also really recommend is expanded magazines. because that increases the amount of ammo capacity for all charges for ballistic weaponry and increases energy weapons efficiency by 50%. It's basically a I shoot more hull mod. Another one that's also really good is the automated repair unit. So if you were to get shot in a certain part of your ship and your weapons are disabled, it repairs itself faster so you can start shooting your weapons again. And there's another one I don't really have right now, which is hardened shields, which makes it so your shields take less damage. So those are the ones I really recommend. Oh, and maybe insulated engine assembly, which means that the opponents can shoot you in their engines a bit more, and you won't short circuit immediately. And now I'm going to quickly cover the mod which I really don't recommend for beginners, which is safety overrides, because safety overrides drastically changes how ships function. So apparently I need even more, I need to get rid of even more stuff here. So yeah, first of all, it costs a massive 30 points to even include this in a ship. The next thing it does is it increases your ship's top speed by a lot. So without safety overrides, this ship's top speed is 119. It's actually modified because I've already got something in there called an unstable injector, but I'm not covering that because that's not really a beginner-friendly mod. So yeah, putting safety overrides in, the ship's top speed is now 149. The downside to safety overrides, however, is that you can no longer vent flux at all. And it also reduces the peak performance time. So like I was explaining before, generally your combat readiness and generally combat readiness in this game is like fatigue. You're in a fight for too long and your soldiers will start like, you can only be alert for so long. Basically, it's like the adrenaline in your crew running out, and then they like start acting slowly more sluggish, where every second in the battle counts. You don't want that. So yeah, it's generally what combat readiness is. If it goes too low, they start having mess ups, like someone will spill hot coffee on the control console, it'll start exploding and stuff, and that's represented by like your ship overloading or maybe the engines failing. Someone drops an entire bucket of like engine lube in the engine coils when really they meant to put in oil. They're like, sorry sir, the engine is kind of screwed for a little while. Yeah, so I'm actually going to now run the simulation with safety overrides installed so you can see just how different it is. So as you can see, my ship is already a lot faster, but the weapon range on the heavy autocannons here is highly reduced, because that's actually another disadvantage of safety overrides. It decreases your weapon range. So safety overrides is a great mod if you're really good at controlling your ship and kind of doing all these like sick-ass drifts here, deja vu style. I'm probably going to include a sound clip of that now, around the enemy ship, and can kind of like avoid their weapons. I'm not doing a good job at avoiding their weapons right now because they got like a really fast auto-firing point defense weapon. But just let's say this is another enemy ship, you can kind of see how I'm running rings around it, but you might not be able to do this when first starting off because I'm kind of a little bit experienced in the game. Also, bear in mind, I'm actually used to flying around where your ship isn't always pointing at your mouse, so I'm actually a little rusty at this, and even with that, I'm flying, I guess, kind of decently. When first starting off, your first flight with safety overrides may look a little more like this. Yeah, bumping into the enemy ship continuously, whacking into their shields, and causing all the weapons in your ship to kind of short circuit a little bit. You can see that the railgun's actually getting disabled, and I'm actually taking more damage here than the enemy ship is. In fact, I may end up blowing up first here. It did happen. Yep. So my ship actually exploded. So yeah, generally pick safety overrides once you've got a good feel of how to fly your ship and you've started flying some faster ships. But to start off, definitely don't pick it. Which means actually it's something to bear in mind when you click on one of the autofits. So this one, Overdriven, actually includes a Flux distributor and safety overrides. So if I were to click this now and then click accept and have my ship, in fact I might as well do that just to show you. Yeah, it's now decked out with safety overrides. So I can just, but I don't want that, so I can just like remove that. Now I'm going to go back over to autofit and have it how I want with how my ship is. So yeah, there's most of the ways that hull mods work. However, I haven't covered built-in hull mods yet. So how they work is pretty self-explanatory. First, I'm going to go over to my character, though. So this here is the level up screen. All this may seem really complicated, but I'm only going to cover one thing for now, and that is story points. Story points are basically points you get for leveling up, and they are the do cool shit points. And they enable you to do a lot of stuff, and you should be kind of wise with how you spend them. Although I guess when first starting off your first game, you may spend a lot of them, because at first when you first start leveling up is easy and you get a lot of them. You may go a little wild spending them, and that is okay. You will generally learn how to spend them better in later game saves, and reserve them a little more. Reserve them a little more and spend them a little more sparsely. But the main thing I'm going to cover right now is using them in refitting your ship. So if you noticed before, there was 2 green hull mods I had here. This is because they are built into your ship. What does building in do? Well, it's kind of you could take it as a little bit of a big investment. What building in means is that you cannot remove the hull mod at all. Example here, reinforced bulkheads, I don't want it. I can just click remove and then add in another mod, for example, auxiliary thrusters I want it to spin around a lot more, like I said before. Anything that's green? No, you can't do anything. It's stuck there. So you really want to make sure that you slot in a hull mod that you really like if you want to build it into your ship. And also, I suggest saving before you do that, in case you want to go back on the save, because once a hull mod is built in, there is literally no way to remove it. Now, you might be thinking, cheese, what's the point? Why would I ever want to even build into a hull mod in my ship? It sounds stupid. I'm not stupid. Well, the reason why you want to build in a hull mod is because it gives you bonus experience and completely removes the cost, ordnance cost of the hull mod. So I'm actually going to just, in fact, I already have a save. Really close to this, and I haven't really done much here. So yeah, I can just actually build in a hull mod right now to show you what will happen. So here we are. I'm going to select integrated targeting unit, and we're going to click confirm. And it'll immediately say that I gained such and such bonus experience, and it is now green. So you can see this is now built in. So I get a bunch of free ordnance points because the ordnance points are no longer being spent on the hull mod. And even though I can't remove it, I can now spend those ordnance points to increase the capacity of this ship, thereby giving it more shields. What does the bonus experience mean? Well, that's really simple to explain. This is basically your experience bar, and this shows how much experience you're currently getting, and this green bar shows how much bonus experience is currently in effect. So how bonus experience works is, let's say you blown up an enemy ship and you gained like 5,000 experience. Bonus experience, you've got a certain limit of it, and it depends on how many cool story actions you've been using your story points to do. And bonus experience will take in effect once you've done stuff such as building in hull mods to your ship and gaining bonus experience. And when you gain regular experience, let's say you gain 5,000 regular experience, the game will try to give you out of your bonus experience pool, which I currently have 15,884,228. That is a chunk load, by the way. That is heaps of it. It will then try and match the amount of experience you got with your bonus experience. And it actually says that this is enough to gain 5 additional story points when your XP is used up. So basically what this game is telling you is that once you reach the max level in this game, you can keep leveling up and keep gaining story points. Okay, boy, that was a lot, but thankfully I have finally covered how hull mods and refitting your ship works here. So in just a moment, I'm now going to cover how actual movement works in the galaxy map, because so far you only know how to fly your ship. In simulation, you don't actually know how to fly in actual space. So yeah, I'll get to that right now. Okay, so here we are on the actual, I guess, system map. It is in the galaxy map right now. But yeah. Here we are. Here's our fleet indicated by this small circle. Yes, I know it looks a lot different in the actual tactical in the actual combat view of the simulation like I was using before. But trust me, you slowly get the hang of this until it's soon enough second nature to you. So right now we're paused. We just press spacebar, just like in the simulation. It'll unpause, and now our fleet will slowly start orbitating Yamar right now which is a planet in the game, because this game features realistic orbit simulation. So the space stations and the like will continuously slowly rotate around around big planets. Moons will rotate around planets, and so will your fleet if you are close enough to a planet. Now for how to move around and stuff like that. Simplest way, left click. If you left click, your fleet will then travel to the place you clicked, and then once it gets there, they will stop and try the best they can to stop themselves and then start entering a stable orbit. However, I'm slowly drifting towards this planet over here because of gravity. I mean, it makes sense. Planet makes gravity, which then means that ships will slowly start drifting there. If you want to go to an actual location, click on it. Example, here's a barren bombarded world. If we were to just click on it, we would fly towards it, and now we have options to select when interacting with the world. However, we don't want to do any of this because this one could potentially up to other factions. This one won't get us that many resources, and the other one, yeah. So yeah, just gonna click leave, and back to this. So, now that I've covered basic movement, these are all basically little dandy ways you can improve your experience and move in different ways. So, the first thing I'm going to cover is the sustained burn and the emergency burn. The sustained burn, which is the first thing I'm going to cover, is pretty much like, is equivalent of in a car going 50 miles per hour and then going 100 miles per hour. It uses more fuel, but it makes your ships travel faster. It also makes it so that your ships can't turn as well. So I'm going to click a location over here, and this fleet is going to start flying, and I'm immediately going to click over here, and as you can see, they have to slowly turn in kind of a wide arc because we've got the hammer down on the accelerator of the ship we're flying here. But let's say I were to tell my ship to go over here, my fleet to go over here, I mean, and then hang on, I want to change my mind, I want to go back to the planet here. As you can see, they're slowly making a long turn here. But if we turn off emergency burn, I mean the sustained burn, and then immediately turn it back on, I'm just going to show you that again, since it wasn't so clear here. So here we are, trying to turn around, we're going to turn it off, and then immediately turn it back on. It enables you to kind of make some quicker turns. So you want to get kind of good at using this when flying your ship. Then here we have emergency burn. This is kind of like the oh shit, we're in heaps of trouble, we need to get out of there quick button, which will oh, just ignore that. I've got a mod installed, which means I have to vote on like alliances and stuff, but never mind with that, about that. So that button there, this button here is emergency burn. It makes it so that your fleet will start consuming more resources, and it will have to repair itself after using it, but it enables you to fly much faster than a sustained burn can do, and also it allows you to turn very quickly as well. So if you're in a really bad situation, it is very good for getting you out of that really bad situation. However, I'm actually not affected by the repairs that your fleet would normally have to do, because I have this a special skill, basically a skill point I've used this level up, which is containment procedures. Emergency burn no longer reduces combat readiness, so it actually wasn't. That's why I'm not using extra supplies. Yeah, which I'll go over soon enough. So yeah, so that's how emergency burn works. Then the next thing we have is an active sensor burst. This is basically like a sonar in subs. You activate it, and if there were things which you can't see outside of your field of vision, it will then generally tell you, hey, there's something outside your field of vision, you can check it out or not whenever you activate it. The downside to the sensor burst, however, you shouldn't use it all the time, because let's say I was flying somewhere, activating the sensor burst, let's say I was doing sustained burn, activating the sensor burst will immediately bring your ship to a complete halt. So if there's an enemy behind you, you didn't know that they were there, and you activated sensor burst, they may catch you, which is not good. Another bad thing about sensor burst is that it enables enemies to find you very easily, as well as you finding them very easily. Okay, so now that I've pretty much covered that, the next thing I'm going to cover is your transponder. So I'm just going to pause the game here quickly so I can explain about this. Pretty much your transponder is It's the equivalent of in real life driving around with your license on you compared to driving around without a license. Except in Starsector, uh, going around without a transponder in most parts of civilized space is considered illegal. The equivalent of the space police for whatever faction you are currently flying around their planet of will generally try and chase you down and order you to turn your transponder on and submit a cargo scan. That may sound completely terrible, and it is. So why do you ever want to have your transponder off? The simple reason is sometimes you may want to shoot someone belonging to a faction to get them out of your way for whatever reason. Even if you're allied with a faction with a transponder off, they may not know it was you, and they may not get angry because it could be just like, oh, some random nobody with a transponder off shot them. It wasn't me who did that. You can kind of avoid the blame. Also, it enables you to do black market trading better, which I will go over soon. But just to show you what happens when your transponder is turned off, I'm going to turn it off right now. By the way, instead of just clicking it once, you need to double click the transponder icon to actually turn it off, because it is a big deal turning the transponder off. And in fact, there you can see on the minimap, a ship is most likely immediately... Okay, that's a merchant convoy. But soon enough, flying around the space here, trust me, some of the space police will come around and be like, hey, don't you have your transponder off? In fact, yeah, here they are. This patrol here has immediately activated emergency burn, and they're flying towards my fleet. And my reputation with them is now reduced because it is illegal to fly with your transponder off. In fact, this lady is actually telling me. And now I have the options to turn it on, and then they will immediately cargo scan me, talk my way out of it, which uses a story point, which is you only want to do this when you're really desperate, or refuse and cut the comm link. This is nearly never a good idea if you don't want to actually be at war with a faction, because this will initiate combat. The space police will be like, right, you don't want to listen to us, we'll shoot you out of the goddamn sky already, space. So I'm going to say yes, turn my transponder on, and now they do a cargo scan, and luckily they found no suspicious cargo, so they are just a little bit upset with me, and not really upset as if they found suspicious cargo. So that's generally how the transponder works. In civilized space, you want to keep it on. But keep in mind that if you were, like, let's say, we're near a planet here, like, let's say, Nechekata, and you had your transponder off, and one of these patrols started going towards you, even if you turn on the transponder afterwards, the patrol still may want to inspect you because they've seen you with your transponder off, and they're not going to just forgive you for immediately turning it on. They're not idiots. Then the other option we have here is going dark. Going dark, oh, by the way, another thing I forgot to mention is when you have your transponder on, this here is your sensor range. So this is generally, that's your sensor profile, and this is your sensor range. Sensor range is kind of like a constant, you know how I was explaining before how the sensor burst will enable to see what you have around you, like a sonar? This is like active sonar. Sensor range is kind of like passive sonar, where certain ships in your fleet will be able to increase this, but it constantly is able to identify ships around you in kind of like a bubble before, like I was going on about in the when I was talking about the bubble around your ship where you can see like your line of sight when in the combat simulation. So that's your sensor range, and then your sensor profile is determined by a number of factors, and this is your sensor profile is basically how well enemy ships fleets can detect, not enemy fleets, but how well other fleets can detect you. So if you turn your transponder off, it goes down by a lot because your transponder is pretty much like a system-wide identification telling people, hey, I'm here. Another way of reducing your sensor range if you don't want to be caught for whatever reason is flying close to an asteroid field. As you can see, it reduces it greatly. And then you also have going dark, which is, if you use that, it turns all your system engines to minimal power, as you can see here. And you move incredibly slowly, but your sensor profile is basically nothing. So I'm pretty much untraceable in this asteroid field right now because it's only 82, unless someone goes right up to me and kind of basically bumps into me while I'm in the asteroid field. So I'm just going to turn my transponder on though and fly closer to this planet so I don't get any more police patrols chasing me. Salvage, by the way, I forgot to mention, but yeah, I'm kind of going to be moving on from going dark and transponders is going to be talking about salvage now because I pretty much said all I need to say about those. Salvage is an option where you can use once you're inside a debris field, and certain ships in your fleet may be really good at actually like sifting through the salvage, and then you get more loot out of a salvage field. For example, this ship here, a Colossus Mk2, and these mules here are good at salvaging stuff, whereas, for example, this ship here it's just a fuel tank, is not that good at salvaging it. I haven't figured out where the exact values here on how good ships are at salvaging, but I've somehow found out that just these two types are good at it. So that's a rough overview of salvaging. Next, we have an interdiction pulse. So I can, and to show this off, I just need to find a another fleet somewhere around here. There should be one somewhere around here. Interdiction pulse is pretty much it fries the burn drives of other fleets and making it so that they can't run away. So I'm just going to activate it right here. It takes a little while to charge, and then once it charges, all these ships now are interdicted, which actually reduce my my reputation with them, because for no random reason at all, like for no reason at all really, I went and basically disabled the engine systems of a number of ships, which they had to turn back on. So I just pissed off a number of space police captains, but they're not super mad at me because it's kind of like, oh, it's just a prank kind of thing. So yeah, that's generally how interdiction pulse works. It takes a little while to charge up. Your fleet is completely still while using it, but then once you fire it off, it will disable the engine systems of enemy fleets, letting you catch up to them. It's basically it's a way of both preventing enemy fleets you don't want chasing you from chasing you, because if you use this and there's someone behind you and they're caught in it, then they'll be slowed down and basically can't move for a little while, enabling you to like activate emergency burn and run away. Or if you're chasing someone, you activate it, you slow them down, you catch up to them, and then you kill them and loot them. Next up, we have Follow Me. This I think is mainly enabled because of a mod I'm using. It basically makes it so that allied fleets next to you will start, maybe it works in the base game as well, I'm actually not too sure about this, but if you see this in your game, basically if you are friendly and allied with a certain faction, for example, the hegemony, pretty much, I'm friendly with them, they're pretty much the government. If I were to fly near their ships and press this button, they like me enough that they will follow me for 15 days, which you can see the days going past there, they go by kind of quickly. It's basically a way of grouping together fleets to help you conquer planets and stuff, and destroy space stations and stuff. It's a follow me button, like it says. Next up, we have the transverse jump, which before I use it, I'm actually running really low on supplies here. I'll explain those soon enough, but let me just go and buy a couple more of them. Yeah, it should be good. Yeah, so this button here, transverse jump, is actually an ability which you don't unlock right away. It is unlocked by getting this, the navigation skill. In my opinion, this skill is really, really great. It's one of the skills I highly recommend. If you're a beginner just starting off and you're at level 1, I suggest picking this over pretty much any other skill, because what it allows you to do is it allows your fleet to move faster through places like asteroid fields. It increases your maximum burn level, and burn level is pretty much equivalent of how fast your fleet is going. So if you were using sustained burn, which is full speed ahead for all your ships, it makes them fly a little bit faster, letting you run away faster and getting to your destination faster, which is why I think it's an excellent ability. And then it also it increases the maximum speed of your ships and gives you transverse jump, which I'm now going to cover. So transverse jump is considered illegal to do in most civilized spaces, such as this place here, but no police patrols are around, space police patrols are around right now, so I should be okay to do it. Pretty much, when you activate it, it makes it so that you don't have to go to one of the warp points on the map to actually get into hyperspace. So I might as well explain that now, because I'm already explaining that. So, not warp points, but jump points. So I'm just going to fly here. This here is a jump point. Pretty much how it works is I'm right now in a system, and flying around a system is generally easier than flying around in hyperspace, because hyperspace is what you use to jump from system to system. So it costs 11 fuel to go into this jump point here, and now we're in hyperspace. When moving around, it costs a lot more fuel to move and that kind of stuff. Oh, and apparently some pirates here want to attack me, but I'm just going to use a story point to disengage from them, even though I normally wouldn't do that. And I'm just gonna fly back over here and go back in system, because I want to explain how the oh, don't worry, that's the mission failing. How the transverse jump works. So how transverse jump works is, it's like going towards a jump point and then going into hyperspace, only you can do it whenever you're near any kind of large celestial body. That's the fancy way of the game of saying it's a large point of gravity, such as a gas giant or a or something like a sun or something. Then you can use this ability and you can jump into hyperspace from wherever you are. It doesn't need to be one of those jump points. And the reason why you'd want to do that is because, as you've seen before, there were enemies waiting for me near there. So, for example, if I were to fly near this planet here, which I actually own, and then activate the ability, I'm just gonna fly there right now and show you what I mean. So, as you've seen before, I've flown out of the jump point, and the pirates were waiting for me. But now I'm going to fly over next to my planet, where there is no jump point, and activate the transverse jump, and then I will be further away from where the pirates are located, which is excellent for avoiding enemy fleets. So here we go, activating transverse jump. It takes a little while to charge, so if an enemy is chasing you, they may find you before you reach it, but here we go. We've now transverse jumped, and the pirates are somewhere over here. We're a little bit further away from them, thereby letting us make our escape quicker. It's very, very useful in that regard. And that pretty much covers how you would use transverse jump. And then one downside, however, to it is that it costs a little bit of supplies and fuel, which resources in this game, to recover. But that is pretty much it. And then the last ability you can activate only when you're actually in system and not in hyperspace is the distress call. You only really want to use the distress call once you're once you're out of fuel, so you can't really fly around anywhere in hyperspace, so you're stranded somewhere, or you're really, really low on supplies, and your ship's ability will break apart, and you don't have enough of them, and stuff like that. Distress calls will kind of broadcast a signal across the galaxy map. So if someone else were to, let's say, broadcast a distress call all the way out here, and I was kind of close by to it, let's say I was flying around this star here, and they broadcast it from here, it would actually show up in my intel feed under new here as a distress call, and then I could go and check it out if I wanted. And then sometimes you'll find someone who's low on fuel. They are like, if you give them fuel for free, they will like you more, and the reputation with that faction will increase, or they will pay you a hefty sum for the fuel because you're going out of their way to check up on them when it's a distress call, and really you can just leave them to their fate and leave them to die if you really want. Yeah, so that is how the distress beacon works. One last thing to remember about this is that don't spam it, otherwise people will get pissed off that someone is constantly spamming the distress beacon and they won't come and actually save you. Press it once and wait. Even though it's tempting to press the button again, maybe use it once, and if someone doesn't come for a really long time, like 5 minutes of real time, not in-game time, then maybe press it again and wait and see if someone comes. If not, you may be crap out of luck, and if no one comes, you may have to just reload a later save. And if you're playing on Iron mode, ooh, I feel for you. Yeah, so that covers all of the basic functions when commanding your fleet in space and when in system. I think this would almost cover the entire beginner's tutorial. However, the one last thing I need to cover is how to interact with factions, stuff like that, and generally how trading and stuff works. So we're going to unpause and then immediately fly over to this place here, Yamaha. Oh, one other thing I forgot is if you hold down Shift, it allows you to speed up time to like 2 times. I'd recommend not doing this at first when you're playing as a new player. I'm only doing this because I really know what I'm doing,
and I've been playing the game for a long time. I say just play it on the normal speed at first so you really get a hang of what you're doing. I just want to speed this up here for the sake of this YouTube video because it's already taking me long enough to in-depth go over each little point. Okay, so this is the equivalent of me basically left-clicking on the station and I've flown to it, and the moment my fleet has touched it, I now get this screen to interact with this station, which belongs currently to a faction that I'm currently friends with, the hegemony, which is basically the government in this world. So there's a number of options you can do here, and some of them occasionally will be grayed out. Leave is really self-explanatory. You click it and you just stop interacting with it and continue on your merry little way and don't interact with the space station. Next up, we have the most common one people are usually clicking: trade goods or hire crew or buy ships or refit. It is a mouthful, but I'm going to go over them one by one so they aren't a huge headache for you to deal with. Refit, thankfully, is actually what I already covered. I already covered this previously in the video. If you've missed that, there should be a timestamp in the description to go back to that and see it. But yes, refit is where I was covering basically installing all the different kinds of weapons and adding built-in hull mods and changing out hull mods and all that kind of stuff. Which also lets you run the combat simulation, which I covered right at the start of the video if you want to go back there. So that's pretty much it. That's what refitting does. You also have the option for, if you click on crew and cargo, then you are able to buy stuff off the black market and the open market. And then if you click fleet here, you are able to buy ships and sell ships off the black market and open market, not open market. However, I am going to just cover cargo first. So, how this game pretty much works is that trading is one of the main mechanics in this game. So, to trade an item, which is basically buying it, it's really, really simple. You click it, and then you put it in this field here if you want to sell it. An example, this is survey data. So I've went and surveyed some planet, and it turned out to be a crappy planet, so that's why I'm only getting 1,000 credits. This isn't that much money, by the way. Then, once you put it in here, it shows you how much it should be selling for, and then it'll take a tariff of 18%, basically everything as taxes except what you're doing on the black market. And once you click confirm, the money is added to your total money, and that's that. That's how you sell something. If you want to buy something, you do the same thing. For example, I want this heavy mortar. You click it, put it over here. The tax will be deducted. It will show you how much it'll cost in total. For example, the mortar would normally cost 120, but since this is 18% tax, it costs 130 extra, so it's 180, 800, not 180, but I totally got that wrong. It would cost 720, but now it's 850. So you click confirm, and now I have successfully bought the mortar, which I can include in any of my ships I want. When it comes to things that they have multiple of, however, there are a couple of different ways to move units over. If you were to just left-click and move it, it would take the entire stack, which, as you can see, is a bad idea because that would put me over capacity for how much my fleet can carry. And when you're over capacity, you use a lot of supplies, these things here, and when supplies run out, your ships will start getting damaged. So it's actually a terrible idea to take this much metal. That's why I'm going to click abort here instead of confirm so I don't buy it. It's like a oops crap, I want to go back button. That's what abort does. Instead, if we hold down control when we click the metal, it'll take the maximum amount of metal that fills up our inventory here, but it won't go over it. What if we don't want to buy that much metal though? Simple. We hold down shift while clicking, and it allows you to slowly increase how many increments of something you want to buy. And notice how the amount will keep on going up. So first it starts off with 1 and 2, and then it starts going by 5s, and it starts going by 10s, and then it starts going by 25, and then slowly, little bit by little bit, it'll start going by hundreds. What if you want to do it by less? Let's say you wanted to only buy, let's say, I don't know, a really odd number like 17. Simple. We go by 15, slot it over, and then go and get another 2. There. Then I have your 17 metal, easy peasy. Yes, this is generally very useful for getting certain amounts of stuff. You can also do the same with weapons. Let's say we only want to buy 2 autocannons. We can only buy 2. Easy peasy. That is how you generally slot in different amounts of stuff. And now I'm going to cover the black market. So, the black market. How this works is pretty much anything you were to sell or buy on the black market has got no trade tariff. So you can see here, this is class 2 survey data, so this is for a better planet that I've gone and surveyed. They're both worth 3,000 credits, and they'd be worth 6,000 in total. If we were to put them on the open market, they'd only give us 4,920 credits because of the trade tariff, which basically the more you're selling, the more you would be taxed. It's pretty much a tax. So if we were to sell it on the on the black market, there is no tax whatsoever. Why wouldn't we be just selling everything on the black market then? Well, the reason why is because you will slowly build up suspicion on the black market, and that is not a good thing at all. Suspicion is terrible in this game. So just from selling these two class 2 survey datas, we get now at minimal suspicion. This means patrols might check up on us, but there's a chance they won't. This goes up from minimal suspicion to moderate to high to very high to extreme. You do not want to be caught with extreme suspicion, because then that will put a major dent in the reputation of the faction you are currently doing the black market stuff with, and they will be very pissed off with you, and also the captain of the actual ship that found you would be very pissed off, and I guess a captain may treat you worse if you keep pissing off the same captain and keep finding the same one, but it's certainly easier to find different ones because each system has different captains. So there are two ways to subvert your suspicion level going up on the black market. The first, and let me just show you how this works by just trading a couple more things on the black market until my suspicion goes up to, in fact, yeah, there it is, already at medium. So the first way that you can reduce your suspicion is start trading stuff on the open market. So if we were to just trade a heap of fuel here, even though it's a bad idea to set it here, this is just an example, then the suspicion eventually, after selling enough of it, I'm just going to sell a bunch of supplies as well, even though I really need them, and this stuff as well. I'm going to keep selling stuff until eventually it will drop, because after you sell enough volume of just things on the black market, it will start dropping. As you can see, they actually didn't get it down to minimal. I traded so many things in the open market that the suspicion dropped all the way back down to none, because basically, if you trade enough stuff, then the officials at the space station start thinking that everything they saw being traded on the black market is an error in their system, and really you were just trading stuff in the legal market, because who only trades a tiny bit in the black market? You either go all in or you go nothing. That's usually how a lot of the AI players in this game play. So you confuse the officials at the spaceports by trading enough legal stuff in the legal channels. Another way to avoid suspicion being risen at the black market is turn off your transponder, quickly go to the planets, hope no patrols see you, and when it says, and then you have to be aware of what this stuff reads. So read what this says when approaching a planet with your transponder off. Your fleet approaches Yamar. Your fleet goes into orbit around Yamar, ignoring requests from the hegemony Port Authority to identify yourself. No hegemony patrols seem to be with you just yet, and you have a window of opportunity for doing business with parties untroubled by your lack of docking clearance. So this pretty much means that you have successfully gone to a place, and it will actually tell you here if you can't trade with the black market. Why couldn't you trade with them? Well, let's say there's a space police patrol really close, and they've seen you train off your transponder, and they're flying over as fast as they can. Like they're right over here next to your fleet, even though it's very hard to see them because my fleet is here all grayed out in the background. They're like, hey, your transponder's off. You better turn it on. If they're too close to you, they're basically scanning you with their passive radar, and they can see you, making it no one at the black market wants to trade with you in fear of getting shot by the space police or arrested. Either one is pretty much as bad as the other for them. So now as we go into the black market, we can start trading a heap of illegal goods, and the suspicion level will never go up. However, when accessing the place like this, since you with your transponder off, no one from the open market will want to trade with you at all, because they don't want to trade with a legal person in case the space police arrest them. So when clicking this button, it makes kind of the error noise because you can't actually do that. You are now forced to trade in the black market, and you can only access stuff on the black market. This is normally an okay thing because your suspicion level won't go up. Just remember that there's a limited amount of stock for everything. For example, I can only buy 114 supplies here, and if I were to buy more, I'd need to come back later with my transponder on, and buy from the open market because there's only so much volume on the black market that you can buy. But yeah, that's covering most of it. Also, another thing you can do while docking at a place with the black market with this transponder off is buying illegal goods. So it will tell you what a faction considers illegal if you just click on them from this kind of diplomacy page here. So here, the hegemony does not like it when you trade harvested organs, heavy armaments, drugs, or AI cores. But since we are currently trading on the black market with the transponder off, we can buy as much of this stuff as we want, and the authorities won't be able to catch us because they don't know it's us doing it. We're doing all of this anonymously. That's what turning your transponder means. When you turn it off, you're doing all the dealing anonymously. It's like buying stuff on the dark web compared to signing in your Amazon account and buying stuff there. That's pretty much how I'm going to explain it. Right, so now that I've covered pretty much how to trade stuff on the black market and stuff, and this is also how you get the most profit, by the way. You buy illegal stuff off one place where they find it cheap, and then you sell it to another place where they'd actually find it more expensive. I actually might as well explain how to do that. So if you were to mouse over something and then press F1, it pretty much brings up this really handy menu telling you the best places to buy it, the places that will sell it the cheapest, and then the places that will buy it where it's the most expensive. So you would have, like, I bought these drugs here for about 167 credits each. So if I were to fly to Ashley here, owned by the Luddic Church, and sell it there, I'd earn a massive profit. But I have to make sure that to avoid the patrols there and not get in trouble by their equivalent of their space police, which are like holy warriors because they're a religious faction. And then I'd have, if they find me and they stop me while having illegal contraband, they may jettison it into space and destroy it. So that's why sometimes trading on the black market, you're best off buying legal goods because, sure, let's say I bought a whole bunch of heavy machinery off this place for real cheap. If they were to find me and scan my cargo, they wouldn't actually find anything out of the ordinary because they just find heavy machinery. They wouldn't know where I got it from, but it isn't legal shit, so they don't have any right to jettison it into space and destroy it. It also means I could fly to the Luddic Path-controlled world, and if they see space patrols around, I can dock with them like normally, with my transponder on, which should be around here normally, and then sell it on the open market instead of trying to do the shady thing of selling on the black market and potentially getting caught and having all my stuff destroyed. When you're getting caught with legal stuff, they won't destroy the contraband. Right, I hope that was a whole heap. And now there's like a few more things that you should probably cover when trading, and that's just some of the basics of things you will definitely need on your space travels. So these things all listed here are actually all very important for just, well, playing the game and not everything turn out horribly. Fuel is very self-explanatory. It basically means that your ships have a way to travel around the sector, because before, when I was in hyperspace, I was using up fuel, and you use a lot more fuel when flying around in hyperspace than you do in system. In fact, when you're in system, you use up pretty much no fuel. Fuel is mainly used for traveling around hyperspace, and if we just press tab and then go into the sector view here, I actually have the fuel range indicator turned on, showing me how fast I can fly, how far I can fly. So this orange circle around here indicates how far I could fly with no return trip. So if I were to fly out here all the way to here, I wouldn't have enough fuel to return. But I can fly around all the way out to here and then fly all the way back to where I am right now, and I'd be fine. I'd have just enough fuel to do that. So that is what fuel is used for. Then we have supplies, which are used for a heap of things. Your ships use up a certain amount of supplies per day, depending on how big the ships are and how intricate they are, like how many, I guess, electrical systems and stuff they have that they need to be taken care of. Supplies are the equivalent of food, rations, uniforms for cadets, and also spare parts, all rolled into one. Pretty much everything your fleet needs, and when they run out, your ships will slowly start taking damage and will eventually die and blow up. You don't want that to happen. So always make sure you have a good amount of supplies on you and restock. Then we have crew. Crew your ships. Yeah, I know, pretty self-explanatory. But let's say we were to stupidly sell a whole bunch of our crew in the black market. Now, if we were to go over our fleet, it says the crew is under strength because we don't have enough crew to properly crew all our ships. It's pretty much like the equivalent of flying with a skeleton crew. So they will not be at the maximum combat readiness, which you want as high as possible because your ships will start, as I said before, at the start of this, very start of this beginner's guide to Starsector, your ships will start malfunctioning if your combat readiness starts going into the negative. So having that at the maximum, which is usually 70, is a very, very good idea. So that's why it's a good idea to always keep enough crew. Heavy machinery is also very important because you need heavy machinery to colonize your own planets. Yes, you can do that, and you also need a good amount of heavy machinery to go and salvage, which would be down here normally, like the salvage option I explained before, to salvage stuff. And if you don't have enough, you get less salvage. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers all the basics of Starsector. This guide has gone on for long enough now. I think I'm going to call it here. Make sure you post in the comments if I missed anything, and I'll try and cover it. If you'd like to see any specific other tutorials for Starsector, and also if you think there's any different ways I can improve my videos, because I, like most people, am always looking to improve my stuff. I'll call it there. Don't have to subscribe or like if you want. Your choice, really. I'm just going to end the video here because, frankly, I don't think a video needs an outro. I'll see you next time if you happen to watch another one of my videos. If not, I still hope this was useful for you. Bye for now.